So my name is John with the Boys and Girls Club in Chicopee, and what we're going to do today is show you how to plant some seeds in pots that our kids can take home and grow, and either grow them in the pot or later on put them in the ground. A couple of things about seeds before we get started. Every time you have a seed packet, there's all kinds of information on the back of the packet that is good to know. It tells you how deep to plant it, what time of year to plant it, what section of the country this particular fruit or vegetable is good for. There's a lot of information on these seed packets. How far the space between them, a lot of good stuff. The sun requirements, they need full sun or partial sun, and how long it takes them to mature. This happens to be a summer squash, a zucchini type squash. The other thing about seeds is there's all different sizes of seeds. This is a pretty big seed. This is a squash seed. I think it's a zucchini or a yellow squash. See how big it is. This little black seed, can you see that?
Yeah.
That's a lettuce seed. See how much smaller it is.
Oh yeah.
And these black ones, they look like little needles. These are the marigolds. This is what we're going to plant today. They don't even look like seeds. They look like needles.
When I first saw them, I did not think they were seeds.
Marigold seeds. This is a dried up flower, marigold flower from last year. It forms a flower, and then in the fall it dries up and it closes up. And if you let it fully dry like this and then open this up, all these little seeds come out. There's probably 200 of them in this little pod here. So that's what we're going to plant, are these marigold seeds. Now the size of the seed dictates how deep you plant it in the soil. This squash seed you'd probably plant about 1 inch deep. The lettuce seeds you only plant about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch deep. Marigold's kind of in between, so we'll probably put about 1/4 inch of soil on top of these seeds. Okay, so that's a little bit about seeds. These, if you want to start seeds, you can start them indoors long before the warm weather comes. And if you have pots, you can use, these are peat pots, or you can have plastic pots that are available. The advantage of these peat pots, when you plant it and the plant starts to grow, you can put this right in the ground. This will decompose and become part of the ground, and the plant roots will grow right through it. If you're using a plastic pot or some other type of pot, you have to take the plant out of the pot and then put it in the ground. But either way works. So the first thing, we're going to put some soil. We're going to show you 2 different sizes. One's a little larger and one small one. We're going to put some potting mix in here. You don't use soil out of the ground, because that'll just compact and get very dense and it won't grow well. What you want to use is potting mix when you're starting seeds from in a pot. And as I mentioned, you can do this indoors, depending on what you're growing and what its tolerance for cold is. You can do it long before the season of when you can put it outside. Now marigolds, you can't really put them outside until all danger of frost. So the end of May is when you can put them outside. So you could probably start these indoors early April, or maybe even earlier, to get a head start. So I put some soil in that larger pot. I'm going to put some in the smaller pot. And you can see this potting soil, it's not just dirt. There's other little things in there. There's some, what they call organic matter. It's like decomposed grass or leaves, and that is very helpful for retaining moisture, and also it acts as a fertilizer. There's also some of these little white pellets in there. Those are to retain moisture. in the potting soil.
That's so cool.
So that's why they have these different types of
Soils.
potting soils, different types of soils.
And I want you guys to notice how much soil John is putting in his cup. So you want to get almost to the top, but not completely.
Yeah, because we're going to put the seeds right on here, and then we're going to add a little more soil, but we're only going to add a 1/4 of an inch or so. So that's about the right amount for these.
Yes.
So when you're planting any seeds that you plant, the likelihood is they're not all going to sprout or germinate. And it varies with the type of flower or vegetable or that you're planting. You might get 50% germination, you might get 90%. So it's a good idea to plant more than one seed, because if you just plant one seed, it might not grow.
Yes.
So I'm going to put about 5 or 6 of these marigold seeds in each pot. And if two sprout, if 2 germinate, that's good. You could probably let 2 grow in this pot. If all 5 sprout, you want to, after they grow a little bit, you want to take 2 or 3 of them out, so you're left with 2. You don't want 5 of them growing in a small pot like this. It would be too crowded.
Then they compete, right?
Yeah, they compete for the moisture, they compete for the nutrients in the soil. I'll do the same thing in that little pot. Top this off. Like I said, we won't put too much on there. We'll put maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of additional soil to cover the seeds. This pot is very small, it's a little harder to deal with.
You make it look good though, John. You make it look easy.
And firm it down a little bit so that the seeds make good contact with the soil, but don't press it hard, because then it'll be too compacted.
Yes.
When
Wow,
the soil is
tuck 'em
loose a
in.
little bit, it's better for the water retention.
Yes.
And the last step really is to water them.
Add the water.
Now, don't be afraid to water them, especially when they're newly planted. They need moisture to germinate. And when they sprout, same thing. Don't be afraid to water them. But you can tell, I think Kaya mentioned it, you can tell by just touching the soil with your finger, you can feel if it's moist or not. If it's not moist, water it. I'm going to put a little more soil on here because it kind of depressed a little bit. The other thing with these peat pots, you can also see the moisture sometime. If you put too much water, the pot will be wet on the outside.
Yeah, this will
Which is not
start to become
necessarily
dry.
bad, but it'll just give you an indication you got plenty of water in there.
So in case you guys have your cups and you feel them start to run over a little bit, you're giving it a good amount, but don't give it a little too much. But this is the same flowers that we actually grew over. Some of them have germinated, as you guys can see, but not gonna lie, me and John had a couple intruders trying to get to these, but they've made it and they're looking pretty good. And you can see, John was showing me by these leaves, that's how you can kind of tell that they're marigold. They have that specific leaf on them.
What I was mentioning before about thinning them out, you can see here, we put in quite a few seeds. We put in maybe 20 seeds in
Yeah, and each one.
each pocket, and a lot of them germinated. So in order to get some real good healthy ones, we need to thin these out. So I'm just going to pick some of them out of here for now. We can thin it again later, but if you've got 2 of them growing very close together, pull a couple of them out. That'll help the other plants get stronger.
Exactly. 'Cause like we said before, they start to compete. They start to compete for the sun, the water, the nutrients, all that. And then that's when you kind of get not so good flowers.
See, we've thinned them out a little bit. Maybe in another couple of weeks we'll thin out some more, because these plants will get, fairly big. A lot of flowers. Marigolds produce a lot of flowers.
They're beautiful flowers too. I don't know if you guys remember last year, the ones that you guys were so kind to give us and put in our hairs and stuff. Those pretty flowers are the ones we're talking about. John, since we watered them and everything, do we want to water the same time every day to keep it on a consistent schedule? Does that matter?
It doesn't matter. I would check them every day, though. Give it the finger test, you know, to see if it's moist. If it's dry, you'll notice right away with this potting soil. It dries out quick, so you'll notice.
And there's that moisture Don was talking about too, right there. You can see a little bit of it.
It'll be like the color of this peat pot, and so you need to water it.
Exactly. But with that too, we want to make sure you guys are giving your plants a lot of sun too, because they need that. You want to make sure you're in a sunny spot so the germination goes really well.
Right. When you take these home, before they sprout, before the plant comes up, you can keep this anywhere. You can put it on the kitchen counter or on your
Refrigerator.
bureau or anywhere. But once the sprouts come up, once the plant starts to come up, you have to put them somewhere where they're getting sun every day, a fair amount of sun, hopefully 6 to 8 hours at least. So if you have a good window that faces south, you have to get your compass out and figure out what's south. If it faces south, you put it on the windowsill. If it's warm weather like this, you could put it outside.
But you want to bring it in at night, right?
You could bring it in at night if it's going to be cold, but the weather's getting pretty warm, so you could almost leave them outside now. But once they sprout, they have to get sun.
Yes. That green needs the sun, because taking you guys back to science class with the chlorophyll and how it works, in order for the plant to produce food, one of the main ingredients it needs is sun. So if you don't get that, your plant's not really getting its food in.
You can see this, the water went right to the bottom, so that's good.
Perfect. And this one, it's starting to, you can see more of the spots are coming, like I said before, looking like a cow.
Yeah, wherever you're going to put this, if you're using a peat pot, even if you're using a regular pot with some holes in the bottom, it's good to put something underneath so it can drain. Like the thing is, once these plants get bigger in here, you could leave them in here, but it's going to be limited how big the plant can get in a small pot. If you want the plant to grow big, you have to put this in the ground somewhere. If you have a spot outside.
Yes.
Or if you don't, you can transfer this to a bigger pot.
Like a plastic pot, like something that's like,
Right.
kind of similar to this size, I guess.
Right.
But
If you leave it in here forever and it's getting big, it's just going to get what they call root bound. The whole thing in there is going to be full of roots, and it stifles the plant. It can't grow. And if you're using a plastic pot instead of a peat pot, when you want to plant it in the ground, or if you want to transfer it to another bigger pot, you have to be gentle. Turn it upside down and squeeze the sides a little bit, and it'll eventually come out. And then put it in the have the hole prepared in the bigger pot and put it in, or in the ground, and put it in there. Same thing. Compress it a little bit and water it. Water it a lot when you transplant it, because it shocks the plant when you transplant it. The roots get shocked. So water it every day for a couple of weeks.
yeah, because about the roots, if you guys remember from our first video with the lettuce, when we were transferring those, we were being very careful with the plastic container it was in, because we didn't want to mess with the roots. And then if you remember, when the roots get a little bit tangled, you can just brush it a bit lightly just to separate them from each other.
So,
Yep.
happy gardening.
Happy gardening. Good luck. Bye.